So, you've worked with Ryan Murphy since Nip Tuck, and the studio was also Emmy nominated for work on Glee. And so, how long have you known Ryan Murphy? Have you worked with him outside of Nip Tuck, or was that your first?
Well, our relationship with Ryan, or my relationship with Ryan and the crew here, was formed through the makeup artist Erin Kruger. She has been working with Ryan for 15 years now. I think I don't know if she started with him with the Nip Tuck series or if she worked on something before. I believe it was Nip Tuck. And since then, she's done Nip Tuck, she's done Glee, American Horror Story. She's executed all his pilots for his other shows. She does his films, Eat, Pray, Love,
Great.
Normal Heart, which is coming out on HBO. She does all of his work now, and it's fantastic when we talk about being full-time employed with the director who's always doing something different and new. I had a relationship with Erin. Erin wanted to use us for some of the episodes in Nip Tuck. They already had a studio that they were commissioned to work with, a competitor of mine. And towards the last season or two, they started fitting in some effects with our studio. And then when she went off to do Glee, which is obviously not an effects-heavy project, the moments that they did have these elements of makeup effects, they used us. And so we just sort of formed very slowly this relationship through Erin with Ryan. And so when American Horror Story came along, of course, it was a sort of a makeup artist studio's sort of dream to have a project where every episode you're creating these cool things, and with somebody who's going to have some real pull with the studio. Ryan Murphy gets to be kind of creatively free, and which allows his worker bees, people like us, to be more creatively free, and then to be on a cable network as well. So the relationship has been sort of over the last decade and has formed more and more through the years, yeah.
That's great. And now, when we did an interview a couple of years back, we discussed Murder House and the amazing work on that, and so let's talk about Asylum. How fun creatively overall was that season for you?
Well, Asylum, for me, I think was the most exciting. Looking back at 3 seasons now of American Horror Story, they all had something that they offered that was different, of course. But I think the second one creatively was the most fun. I think the first one was the most exciting because it was brand new and fresh. And then the third one here, I was a little indifferent about because we were exploring a lot of fun ideas, but it seemed to follow a little bit more of a rule. Whereas the first 2 seasons we could break a lot of rules. We were going off into this haunted house concept where you had ghosts, so a lot of things could happen. Then you had in the second season just like a playground of characters from the Raspers, which were these weird scientific creations by the Doctor, and Bloody Face the serial killer, which Bloody Face was like the craziest character, I think, one of the craziest characters we've ever had to design, because when Ryan came to us, he goes, I want to have a serial killer with a mask, but I don't want anything like what we've seen before, Michael Myers, all these other characters, Jason with the hockey mask. Has to be completely original, but equally terrifying and immediately symbolic. Okay, how do you do that? You certainly don't know that it's going to, be the face of horror when you create it. That's just something that naturally happens. So season 2 really, I think, was something to bite into. Although the third season, I got to say, doing Evan as the Frankenstein character, even though it only lasted for a couple episodes because he sort of self-heals through the magic. But those first episodes when he was all sewn and stitched together, I thought that was really, really a fun task. And
and back to Asylum for a second. Now, Adam Levine's, that was his acting debut on television, and he was very vocal about not liking gore and horror and all that, and then his character gets his arm completely severed off. Was that challenging working with somebody that's a little skittish on that type of stuff, or how did you create that effect?
Well, you know, there was a gentleman working in the studio who handles a lot of the effects, Jason Hamer, who really sort of spearheaded that particular effect. I was out of the office when Adam came in, and when we did the fitting with the fake arm. I never got to meet Adam, so you know, my wife was, I think, more disappointed than I was about that. But yeah, you know, from what I understood, and you know, he was extremely gracious, very kind. The crew seemed to love him. So I never heard that he was fearful of gore or didn't like it too much. So that's news to me. But it was sort of a very simple kind of effect. We had we tied his arm behind his back, and we had this shoulder harness that had sort of the stub of the gore after the arm gets ripped off, and then we built the arm to match Adam's with all the tattoos and everything on it, and that sort of fit like a puzzle piece into the shoulder. And there was some rigs running through it with tubes and blood, and so when the arm gets pulled away from the stump, you know, everything sort of reacts. The blood explodes, the tendons and the muscles sort of rip from each other, and I think it's much more impressive watching it and seeing it with the way we created it versus what you even see on camera, because on camera they have to cut away from some of that, either for purposes of ratings, or they have to, or the sequence requires more movement, so you don't really get a hold on it. And when we test the shot like that in the shop, it's, you know, you get so excited, like, oh, look at it rip, look at it tear, and the blood moving, and then you never get to see it on camera. So, you know, I think for us it's more fun to create an effect like that with a celebrity like Adam than what the end result is actually going to be on camera.
And Chloe Sevigny with the amputation and I mean, now how did you guys? That was just
coolest girl,
mind blowing.
Yeah, coolest girl.
Oh.
She is. She's fantastic, and of course, I'm not making it to set every day. I'm not there all the time. I'm sort of the big picture guy, and so I didn't get the liberty of being able to sort of be with her all those hours and really get to know her. But you know, I met her and she was fantastic, and she was very excited about it, and she loved the whole process. There was a handful of people, again, Jason Hamer, Mike McCash, Aaron Kruger, Chris Nelson. There was a group of people really involved on putting that character together, especially in her more advanced evolution with all the bubbles and blisters and everything. But you know, we take an approach to every effect on this show, and especially somebody like her character, with the most simple sort of direction we can get to. We're working against a time frame. We have to do elements that are practical enough that they can be moved around, because these characters are never usually just in one room. And you know, we rely on playing with other departments. So for a character like Chloe, for the stump of the legs, what we did is we did a very simple green screen on her legs from the knee down. We created a prosthetic that blended up onto her thigh and sort of bridged off of her leg, so so you would get that turn of the stump where the knee is, and that sort of extended out. So if she was standing up, it would look like she'd have these two fake weird thighs sort of protruding from her legs. But when she lays down and her, or you take away the lower part of her legs, all of a sudden it looks like these floating thighs that have been amputated and sewn back together. Probably visually one of the coolest pieces that we have in our shop. We had this sculptor who, the way he created the motion of the flesh coming together where it's sewn together, and the movement there, just so dynamic, so wonderful.
Incredible, wow.
Really, really beautiful. You know, and when I design a character like that, I design it, there's a gentleman named Jared Morantz who I do a lot of the illustrations with. He'll usually do the first pass because he's so good and so fast, and then I'll come in and I'll Photoshop some different elements in, or I'll redirect him to do something else. And I remember when we designed that character, it was very fast, very crude as far as a painted image, and what they ended up translating then to physically the crew was really, it was stunning.
Skipping ahead to Coven, a couple of the most spectacular, well, there was a lot there too, but first of all, Kathy Bates, we just have to talk about Kathy Bates in general. Just love her, huge fan of Kathy Bates, and just that decapitation, the decapitated head. Now, what do you do? Just make a casting of, does she come in and get a casting of her whole head, and then
She did.
Oh my gosh.
It originally, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be, I very much could be. There's so much happening on these shows. I never really remember the timeline for everything, but I remember Kathy needed to come into the shop. I was out of town for that day, and she had to come in. She was scheduled to come in. I believe it was just for a hand cast, and because she was going to get her hand chopped off. And there were rumors and talks about, well, we're going to chop off her head, but we don't know. And of course, everything costs dollars. So if you don't have to cast someone's head, not only do you not want to take their time, you don't want to do the preparations, you don't want to go through all the expenses of it, if it's just not necessary. It's a lot of emotional as well as financial, sort of compensation. So don't do it if you don't need it, is always our motto. And she was here, and then as she was walking out the door to leave, Robin, who coordinates the entire show for me, she had to grab her and basically say, sorry, we just got the phone call, you're not done yet, we have to bring you back in. And because at the moment they were still writing, quite literally, what they're going to do, and they didn't know what they were going to do. And I don't think it was really, probably for another day or so, that they committed to saying, yeah, we're going to chop her head off, we want a fake head. So even though they knew that they might cut her head off, they didn't know if they were going to do it digitally, or if they needed the physical head there. There's, you're always sort of juggling that side of it as well. Even though you're going to do it, is this an element that needs to be built? It's easy for us to say, well, build it anyways, and then if you don't use it. However, when you're talking about an actress like Kathy Bates, and of course the attention to detail that has to go into something like that so people will believe that it's Kathy Bates, these types of elements can get very, very expensive and very costly. And so we don't take that lightly. We want to put production's cost and value into what's going to be on screen, not just into the, hey, wouldn't it be cool aspect. So
now, Sarah Paulson with her eyes. I mean, the whole getting the acid thrown in her face and those creepy, I don't even know how to describe the eyes, but how did you guys achieve that? And then on top of that, having to gouge her own eyes out. I mean, just the things that go on. But how were you able to achieve that as far as, her actually piercing her own? We know she didn't really do that, but
right.
It was so realistic. And so,
Robin, that was a digital effect, right?
They didn't show the gouging on camera, but we did have a prosthetic, and her eyelids were painted under them. So
yeah, we had that part. Yeah, but the piercing of it, that was.
That it was not.
Yeah, that wasn't
Okay.
effect
It
we
wasn't
did.
shown. She did like this, and they cut.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I'll get back to you.
Okay.
Yeah, the Sarah Paulson eye thing. There's all these aspects that go into create an effect like that, and because of all the elements and because of the way this show is shot, you never quite know which part of it that you're doing and which part you're not doing until the very last minute. So when it came to Sarah Paulson, there was a lot of talks about how because we built a fake head earlier in the show where somebody gets their eyes sort of scooped out with a melon scooper, and so again, are we bringing that same sensibility into this? Are we building a fake head? How much of it becomes digital? What are we doing? And what we ended up landing at was a prosthetic that she wore, where it was just basically a false sort of piece that sort of extended beyond her actual brow and eyelids, and then underneath it was almost like a lens piece that looked like the gory tissue of where the eye would have been. And the reason why we make that as a separate element is that, of course, during the day, you have this piece over your face and you're trying to perform an act and you want to see and go to the bathroom and everything else. So that piece has to come out so the actor can see. There was contact lenses at some stage with her, either that we built or that we were going to build. You know, there's just so many elements that go into this, and sometimes, you know, I even have to ask, like, what we end up going out with, because now that the show is being shot in New Orleans, we send usually 3 or 4 elements out, and we don't know what ends up gonna, you know, what's gonna end up on camera that day, because the crew could be there and they could be faced with the time crunch. Something else got delayed, they have to get this shot, but it's the last shot at the end of the night, it's midnight, the crew's been working for 16 hours, give us the simple version and we'll fix it later in post. Okay. Those types of situations happen a lot, so yeah, it's...
and then, skipping back real quick to Evan, we mentioned that as Frankenstein, or so, was that a lot of tattoos, or how did you achieve that?
Sure. Yeah, Evan with sort of the modern day Frankenstein, that was a combination of prosthetics and tattoos. It was a lot of prosthetic. In fact, we had pieces that covered his entire chest, his entire back. It was almost like a bodysuit of prosthetic, all the way up to his chin, really, because the neck piece wrapped all the way around. And again, we had a full chest, full back, so that way from 360 you could see him. His arms, I think he probably had from like mid-bicep to mid-forearm was exposed. And we had his wrist area and the upper part of the arm was covered in prosthetics as well. But then he went through stages. As he started to heal, we had a couple different stages of prosthetics, as well as we started to incorporate tattoos that looked like healed, sort of flat scarring. And so through his progression, the evolution of the prosthetics became tattoos, and then eventually just went away altogether.
Oh, that's just got to be a lot of intricate work for you guys.
Well, trying to plan it. You know, I think getting the information is always the most difficult part, is because sometimes we don't know where the next episode's going to lead us, or even 4 episodes from now. And that's really where you can plan ahead and you can design something now for 4 episodes from now. But it seems like we're always very current in our execution. So next episode we'll get thrown a curveball, and we're trying to figure out how to incorporate something that we've already created into this new idea. It can be tricky.
And so, as far as Freak Show goes, then you're just sort of in the beginning stages of talking to Ryan about that, and we don't have any conceptual...
I have that much about this one. Yeah,
okay.
I know it gets scary. We're in the middle of May, but it's usually every season that we've done for American Horror Story. It's about mid-May to mid-June is when we start really having the discussions. Ryan is still formulating all these ideas. He's sort of taken the year away from American Horror Story and has worked on his other projects, and then he comes back to this. And when he's ready to start talking about it, we jump in with both feet. Very excited about the new concept for the season, but I know nothing about it. I've heard rumors. I've heard a couple rumors.
Okay.
There's going to be a lot of practical elements, meaning I know he's really pulling in. I mean, you got to imagine it's Freak Show and it's a carnival,
right?
So we can falsify a lot. But if there are real individuals who can really play the part, Ryan will search them out. and Ryan, from what I understand, is searching out individuals to play a lot of these roles who have some of these, you know, what might be considered handicaps or you know, differences. So there'll be some elements that maybe we're enhancing or embellishing, maybe some characters that we're creating from scratch. I don't know yet. I really have no idea.
And I guess my final thing would be, you've achieved so much, it seems like in a short time, because you're still so young. And do you have any advice for aspiring artists out there who are, is it a tough field to break into? Would you have any advice for aspiring makeup artists? Do you take on interns, or do you mentor Any new and upcoming artists?
That's a lot of answer
That's a
there.
big question.
You know, we do. Well, I'll start with the part about the type of people that we bring on. So often, we're building things and elements, and there's obviously a pool of artists that I like to work with, that I enjoy working with. I know their sensibilities. I know how much I can push them. I know what their strengths are. And so I like to pull from those people, obviously. A lot of what we do here is very character driven. You know, you don't usually find my company or my name attached to projects that are building, you know, 300-foot creatures or an army of, you know, Walking Dead people, right? That's not what I do. And so I keep my crew very tight and very small. On the occasion, we'll bring in a new individual, not somebody that I feel like we can mentor, but somebody that I feel has, I usually look for somebody who has a good head on their shoulders, somebody who's driven, somebody who's excited about it, somebody who will give it 100%, but also somebody who's not just looking for the quick return. You know, I've noticed there's been a change over the years that with the more popular makeup effects have become, you know, you got to think of what we do as a magic trick. We're magicians essentially, right? In a weird way. And magicians were never popular. They're always this weird sort of kid individual who wants to be a magician. But all of a sudden there's this popularity of what we do with TV shows like Face Off and stuff like that. And so you're having this influx of individuals who are coming out of high school or don't know what they want to do with their life, and they see this and they go, oh, wouldn't that be cool, because it's easy. You know, they're making a half-an-hour TV show out of it. That means I can do it. And they got schools I can look up now, and there's not really any passion for it. It's just a job to do. And when you look at something with just the job mentality, what you're going to find is you're going to find a lot of individuals who go, well, how much money can I make? How quickly can I make it? Am I going to, you know what I mean?
Yep.
How fast can I climb that ladder?
Yep.
Whereas somebody who has passion for what they do, I think really just receives things as it comes, and as they receive it, they become better, and they just sort of give themselves to the craft. Doesn't mean you don't want to make a living at it, but I try to look for that. Who has real passion? Who's willing to learn a little bit and grow with it, as opposed to, you know, I went to school, therefore I deserve a $40 an hour paycheck plus benefits. It's like, well, you're probably in the wrong business for then. It's also a business that is, you know, 20 years ago there was this scare of, oh my God, makeup effects is done, it's all digital now. And, you know, that's proven to be wrong. I mean, makeup effects is around. It's a part of filmmaking. It's a craft. It's a tool. It's just the tool has been sort of reshaped. It's not the only tool in the shed now. You know, there's visual effects and there's other things. And I think as long as we're realistic about how it can be used, it can be utilized successfully. But I think it's shrunk in its scope and its size, and because of that, it's become an industry it's oversaturated with talent now. At one point, there was this need for more and more and more, and now it's kind of, there's too many talented people in such a small industry. I encourage anybody to, I mean, look, I came into it late, and I've had, I think, some very, very great success. I mean, the fact that you know, I tell you what makes me excited. My wife was asking me this the other day. The fact that I can call another makeup artist in a different part of the world who I've never met, who I don't know, but somebody whose work I admire, and I can not only get their phone number and make that phone call, and they pick up my phone call or call me back, because for whatever weird reason, you know, they know my name. I have a position in this industry that has allowed people to sort of return my phone call that way. That's exciting. To me, I feel like a kid. I'm like, oh my God, they're returning my phone call. That's so cool. And I feel like that's a really neat place to be. And I think if you can sort of, there's always that place that exists somebody's going to come into this business and they're going to do something very cool. They're going to expand on what they're going to do. They're going to combine our field with something else that's going on in the industry, and they're going to make something even cooler out of it. So I think it's certainly an industry that if you have a passion for it, get into it. Of course there's work in it. But if you're just looking for a job and looking for something to do, and you think that might be fun, probably not the right place to be. I think it's, I think search for some passion, find something else.
Well, I just want to thank you so much for your time today and
Yeah.
all of your wonderful information. And I just wish you guys the best success on the new season coming up, and just congratulations on everything you've achieved. And thank you very much. It's been a total honor covering your work, and looking forward to doing so in the future. So
Oh, thank
thank
you.
you very much.
All right.